Alrighty, it is Sunday, September 28th, 2025, and welcome back to First and Short, your first place to get short bits of college football news and analysis.
Yes, sir.
I'm Aaron, and I'm here with my co-host, Mashfik. Before we get started, please, if you're an avid watcher or if this is your first time watching, please subscribe. We are on, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. It's free. It helps us out, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the agenda on some of the things we're going to talk about today. So we're going to review games from the weekend. We're going to do some analysis. And we're also going to talk about who had the Saturday this weekend, all in week 5. With that being said, Mash, go ahead and kick us off.
Yes, sir. So week 5 is in the bag. Honestly, I think we explored the concept of separation last episode when we were doing a preview of this weekend. And honestly, I think that's coming to a head now. You can forget all the predictions that you've made, forget all the kind of preseason concepts that you had in your mind about what these teams are and where these teams are going to land. Week 5 wasn't just chaotic, it was carnage for the top 10. We had 4 top 10 teams go down, 2 of them actually in double overtime. Kind of thriller type games. So it's been a massive power shift, kind of in the SEC. The SEC favorite lost, and then, a new look in the Big Ten. Teams that you didn't necessarily think were going to, do well in the Big Ten are starting to do well now. So we're throwing out the old rankings. We're starting new. Let's take a look at a few games. Before we get started, I just want to say we were wrong on our underdog pick by the week. Underdog pick of the week. TCU lost by exactly 3 points, and they were a dog by 2.5. So our record is 4-2 there. Let's start with Florida State at Virginia, right? So it seems like Florida State got caught looking ahead to a massive, rivalry game next week against Miami, but they walked into Charlottesville and got absolutely blindsided. They lost 46-38 in double overtime. And they also had a wide receiver get completely swallowed up by the field storming, which, let's talk about that. So I get it. Like, it looks fun, but that was kind of dangerous. Like, that wide receiver was still on the ground when all those people started storming. It starts as a $50,000 fine for the first offense, and then it starts going up from there. But Aaron, do you have any thoughts? I mean, like, you can't stop it, I guess, or at least $50,000 is not enough to stop it. So what do you think? What do you think about that?
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, it's like, the worst type of scenario for an opposing team to be in. You got a school who's just excited, pumped up, ready to, upset and beat you. And at the end of the game, you got 20,000 drunk college students ready to come onto the field and just be accessible to be, exactly, trample you and your teammates. So it's just like, at some point we're going to have to consider, okay, this is a potential, hazard and safety risk for these players who are not just college students. They're celebrities, at a certain point in time. I mean, Of course we want to normalize them being kids at the same time, but you also have to protect them. Not only them, the coaches. Like, I saw Florida State's quarterback while he was walking off the field, he was getting flicked off. Their head coach, Mike Norvell, he had security by him, but like people were still coming up to them, and it's like at some point in time, people are only going to put up with so much, After the 10th guy walking up to your face, either cussing at you, flicking you off, or recording your phone. I mean, maybe somebody's going to have a breaking point to where there's retaliation or something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, they might need to add a 0 to the end of that fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's get into the game. The Seminoles, they were an 8-point favorite, but honestly, they just never looked comfortable. It was a classic trap game, plain and simple. We mentioned on the last episode that Virginia is actually, the second highest scoring team in the ACC. What impressed me was their defense was able to step up and close the gap that was needed in order to kind of seal the win for UVA. I think, Florida State, they lost this game despite outgaining Virginia. on total offense, but I think the difference was, turnovers and penalties. FSU had 11 penalties for over 100 yards, and they turned the ball over 3 times. One of which we're going to review on video. And the Cavaliers' defense for Virginia, they were phenomenal, especially in the red zone. So there's this one video that I want to. Well, it's 2 videos, but it's 2 plays for Castellanos where he goes under center. And the first one's kind of a trick play. It works the first time. The second one's not a trick play, not necessarily, but it's a similar looking play. But the defense stays very disciplined, and they're able to get an interception off of it. So let me pull up that video real quick and get your thoughts. All right. So in this video, Florida State is on offense. Thomas Castellanos is under center. It's going to be a trick play, Aaron. But what are you seeing here that Florida State is showing, and how is Virginia responding? And let me know when you want to start the play.
Yeah, so it looks like, Florida State, they got a single back in the backfield, got a bunch of receivers on the right-hand side, trips. I mean, it looks like Virginia's lining up pretty much head up against it, right? So man on man, everybody's got a man, they're pointing them out, and it's time to play, trench ball, basically, time to stand up on defense and run the play. That's the one that worked, right?
Sorry, yes, that was the one that, yeah, correct. So that's the trick play that he was able to run for a first down and get in field goal range.
Yep. So that's so hard to guard because you're trying to stay disciplined and stick with your man, but Castellanos in space, he's gonna get that every time.
Yeah. So let's look in the second one. All right. So now pulling up the second one, he goes under center again, and let's see what we see.
Yeah, I see more people up on the line committed to stopping the run right there.
Yeah,
I think they
send off.
Yeah, guys, right?
They started blitzing them so much more, and look at that interception.
Exactly.
What did Virginia do better? Yeah, what did Virginia do better this time around in order to force that interception?
Yeah, making the playmaker that Florida State wanted to make the play, Castellanos, making him make a decision fast, not giving him time to be comfortable and use his dual threat ability, right? And since he didn't have time to do anything except dump it off, your guys are there to cover the ball. If you don't give the quarterback time, the odds are more in your favor.
All right, so appreciate you providing that analysis on that video. One last thing I wanted to cover on the Florida State game, Deuce Robinson, he was phenomenal in this game. He played at USC for a couple of years before, transferring to Florida State this year. Should have came to Georgia. But anyway, that last catch that he bobbled a little bit, that was obviously a point of contention, and Florida State fans are obviously going to say, no, that was a catch. I mean, he was still bobbling the ball as he was running out. So to me, as a non-biased, audience member, it seemed pretty cut and dry that was not a catch. But
yeah,
anyway, that was my kind of last thought on that game.
And hey, if you watch that game, they gave us a different POV on what the referees go through when they actually review those
that
plays.
Was awesome. Oh, how did we miss that? That was awesome.
That was
every
great.
league needs. I know the SEC is not going to let that happen, but shout out to the ACC for letting us listen in on that. That was great.
That was great. That's right. So next on the list, let's talk about our next game. Number 4 LSU at Ole Miss, right? Topic of that game, it seems like Kiffin's crew is, college football playoff ready, right? Down the road in Oxford, Lane Kiffin's Rebels prove that they're absolutely for real, taking down LSU 24-19. First things first, Trinidad Chambliss, right? He stepped in and he threw 314 yards and a touchdown. The Rebels offense, even without their starter, they found a way to win. They dominated possession by nearly 10 minutes against a top 5 team. That shows discipline. That shows that, the team is a well-coached offense and they know how to control the ball, run the ball, and control the clock, right?
So I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Austin Simmons transferring to next season?
So his job is already took. That,
Yeah,
that's the analysis at hand.
we'll discuss that some other time in the off
Okay, for
season,
sure,
maybe.
for sure, for sure. But yeah, man, next man up. It can be good and bad in some cases, depending on who it is. But yeah, so my overall take from the game, LSU, they're after this game, separation. They're falling out of that top tier now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, their defense played well enough to keep it close, but in this, SEC West brawl, their offense wasn't enough. Old Miss, their play was consistent and they had an offensive balance. It's probably going to push them towards a top 5 spot in the conference polls or in the AP national polls. Sorry. Um, with Oklahoma and Georgia being their only current ranked teams left on the schedule, I think their chances of making the college football playoffs are looking really good right now. As they stay
For
undefeated. Yeah. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think they had a similar chance last year. They just had a couple slip ups later
Mm-hmm.
on in the season. So, yeah, I know if everything is ahead of them for sure. And Trinidad Chambliss is looking good. So, I hope they can keep that up. Moving along, we had number one Ohio State taking the trip up to Seattle to play Washington. I think Ohio State showed why they are still number one. They're number one for a reason. They are they don't like to say they are the defending champion, but until someone can knock them off, I think they deserve that number one ranking. They got the win 24-6, but it was actually like pretty close for most of the game. I think it kind of started to separate like late in the third quarter. The score was a little deceiving, but I applaud Washington for their grit and keeping an offense like that close in score. I mean. Who I applaud even more is Ohio State. They managed to keep their poise the entire game. Defense didn't give up a single touchdown, especially in an environment like at Husky Stadium. Julian saying he kept his poise and they didn't force. He didn't force anything that he didn't have to, and he had 2 touchdowns, 78% passing yard completion, and like I said, no interceptions. So this team continues to show why they deserve the number one spot. We'll see if they got some big hitters in terms of the Big Ten coming up, but right now they're still looking good.
Yep. Alrighty. Next on the list, you got Auburn. They went to number 9 Texas A&M this weekend, and it seemed like the 12th man was on defense for Texas A&M on Saturday, right? Instead of it being an SEC shootout, it seemed more so like a defensive clinic.
Yeah.
Uh, with that being said, the Aggies, they really leaned heavy on Le'Veon Moss, right? He racked up a career high 139 yards rushing, and he punched in the only touchdown of the game for them on the opening drive. Uh, Auburn's defense held strong pretty much after that, but the Tigers' offense was nowhere to be found. Get this stat: 0 for 12 on third down conversions. That's insane. You can't win a game if you can't move the ball on third down.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they had just 176 total yards, and Jackson Arnold, he was under attack in his backfield all weekend. I believe he got sacked 5 times. Um, yeah,
Yeah, never mind. I was gonna say it would be interesting to see how many of those were his fault again.
true, true. You got to consider when the quarterback is not patient and when he's mobile, what's going to
Yeah.
happen to those stats. Even when Auburn got a little spark, they had a 73-yard touchdown pick six by Xavier Atkins. They couldn't capitalize, right? Uh, Marcel Reed, he had flashes. KC Conception, he went off for 113 yards receiving, but penalties and missed opportunities kept the Aggies from pulling away and making it a clear, dominant win. Bottom line that I have for this one, A&M's defense won this game, but Auburn's offense definitely lost it. So both teams walk away knowing they've got work to do before the next ACC test. But hey, Texas A&M, they stay alive to a potential conference championship and playoff contention.
Yep. Cool. Let's move on. Number 22, Notre Dame at Arkansas. The Fighting Irish are still fighting. What I really enjoyed watching this game was you could tell the love was in the air. Jeremiah Love, his usage had been low those first couple games. Coincidentally, they lost those 2 games. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns. What did I say? 2 rushing, 2 receiving touchdowns. So 4 total. This was, I thought, a statement win from Marcus Freeman and his squad. They steamrolled Arkansas 56-13. The Irish offense just looked like it was on fast forward the whole time. CJ Carr was surgical. Like I said, he had 4 passing touchdowns, and he spread the ball quite well. Although Jeremiah Love was on the receiving end of a lot of that. I think the game plan here was to be aggressive and relentless. Notre Dame and Arkansas had never played before, ever in history. But obviously, being in the SEC typically means there's some level of physicality and speed and aggression. But so Marcus Freeman definitely wanted to meet that and supersede that. So it paid off early, with a 42-13 halftime lead. And it let, the Irish kind of coast the second half. I think the real story here was Notre Dame's defense finally showed signs of life. It showed signs of being able to strangle an offense. After, weeks of criticism on that defense, they were able to bottle up Taylon Green, who's, he's shown sparks throughout his this season. They forced turnovers, and they held one of the nation's top offenses to just a single touchdown, which was on a trick play, actually. So nothing to hang your hat on that one. They're now 2-2, Notre Dame is, but with this kind of momentum, I think a lot of stuff is still ahead of them. They get a little special, consideration for the playoffs and all that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot to look forward to if you are, Notre Dame.
Yep. All right, moving on. Let's talk about, number 16, Georgia Tech traveling down to Wake Forest, conference play. Georgia Tech, they had a heart-pounding 30-29 win in overtime in Wake Forest. Mm-hmm. They were initially down 20-3 in the third quarter.
Aaron, I was watching this game in Athens. It was a generational hate watch type of situation going on. Go ahead. Sorry.
It was crazy. Yeah, man. But the guy who led them all the way back, the man, the myth, the legend, Haynes King, again. And of course he was running for 2 touchdowns, and he led a final drive that, got them a game-tying field goal with 2 seconds left. Wake Forest, they had their shot in overtime. I believe their running back broke loose for a 25-yard score, and then with the injuries and Robbie Ashford limping on the field, the first-year head coach, Jake Dickard, he wanted us to roll the dice. He wanted to go for a 2-point try and just end the game there. And so, you got Ashford scrambling. He tried to force a throw across his body back across the field on that 2-point conversion play. And then Georgia Tech's DB ended up picking the ball off and sealing the game there.
I don't know much about football, but I know you're not supposed to throw it like that.
Yeah, man. And so with that type of finish, you see one sideline just celebrating and going crazy, and the other sideline is just stunned in silence. Nonetheless, Brent Key's squad is now 5-0 for the first time since 2014. They're not just surviving. They're finding ways to win when it matters most.
Yeah, nice. Georgia Tech has a better record than Georgia does.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Number 6, Oregon. The Oregon Ducks went up to number 3, Penn State. They took that whiteout at night to the chin, and they won double overtime, 30-24. I just want to say welcome to the national stage, Dante Moore. I don't think everyone, kind of knew his name just yet. They should now. He was 29 for 39, 248 yards, and 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in one of the most savage, home environments in college football. The stadium pulse was going nuts. He was able to get a game-winning touchdown to Gary Bryant Jr. on the first play of the second overtime. I think that just shows so much mental discipline to be able to do something like that in that, environment. Even though this game was being played in Beaver Stadium, a different animal comes to mind when I think of this game, and that is the groundhog. as in it feels like we're in Groundhog Day, and we keep seeing the same story for James Franklin play out over and over again, each year, sometimes multiple times a year. James Franklin is now 4-21 against top 10 opponents, and they blew a 14-point fourth quarter lead. I also want to highlight Oregon's defense. I think that's a huge unit that led to the outcome of this game. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, the two running backs for Penn State, best duo in America, in my opinion. They combined for only 75 yards on 23 carries. So that's less than 3.5 yards a carry. This is against an Oregon defense that was gashed for nearly 300 rushing yards in the Big Ten championship game last year against the same team. So they put on a defensive clinic. Plus, they won. Oregon won on a defensive play by getting an interception on Drew Aller's first pass in the second overtime. So, big story of the game. Obviously, Dan Lanning, his history as a defensive coordinator. Obviously, he puts a lot of emphasis on defense, and they showed out they showed out in this game in order to seal that win. Although the running backs on Penn State side, they had their performance. It is what that was. The running back on Oregon side, or at least one of them, Dierre Hill Jr., the true freshman that we talked about in the last episode, he gave Oregon a healthy, 82 yards on 10 carries, 8.2 yards a carry, plus a receiving touchdown. So that's a great addition. It shows great depth for Oregon, especially as the Big Ten, kind of grind is ramping up. So that's great to see on Oregon's side. Looking ahead, Penn State is at UCLA and then Northwestern at home. So they have a couple weeks to, kind of get back right. But in a few weeks after that, they go to Ohio State and then they host Indiana, which is now looking like a huge matchup, right? So their margin for error, especially with this home loss, is very slim when we're thinking about what their goals are for the end of the season. So I wanted to ask you, Aaron, where do you see Penn State in the pecking order, whether it's in the Big Ten or the national landscape? Where do you see them ending their season? Kind of like, yeah.
Sure. So you kind of, foreshadowed to how they do in those big time conference games, with, their head coach's record in those big time games. I see them, potentially making the playoffs. They'll probably go 10-2. Maybe lose another big game. I don't know if they have Ohio State or Indiana on the schedule. They'll drop one. And I think I see them making the college football playoffs and having a first round exit. I don't know what it is, but they can't find that elevation to get past that top tier level, but execute to a national championship level. They can't seem to win those big games, even at home. So, yeah, that's where I got them right now.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So, next on the agenda, we have another game that was a 7:30 primetime game. We have, number 17 Alabama going to number 5 Georgia, and my synopsis so far is Alabama, they took a bite out of number 5 Georgia. The final score ended up being 24-21 Alabama, and all 24 points came in the first half, by the way. That was all they needed. With this loss, Kirby Smart is now 1-7 all time against Alabama, dating back to both the Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer eras. More notably, this snaps Georgia's 33-game home winning streak. That was the longest active FBS streak in the nation.
This whole situation, it kind of reminds me of that Grim Reaper meme where he's like going from door to door, and it's like it's Alabama just destroying every single one of Georgia's streaks. A couple years ago, it was like the longest winning streak. Now it's the home winning streak. I saw something that said in this game, Georgia didn't lead at any point, which is the first time in like 30 years or something. It was, yeah, or whatever it was. But, the Grim Reaper meme, comes to mind here for me.
Yep. One key thing I wanted to highlight, Alabama's offensive line. So I know, Mash, you were at the game, but one thing I saw on the TV, like these guys were just huge and holding their own the whole time in the pocket, right?
And you can tell from my voice, we were doing our job. I think there
Yeah.
was one false start that I caused, but
Mm-hmm.
they, for real, like very disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
They just seemed like they were 100 pounds bigger than anything Georgia could throw at them.
Yep.
Really shout out to Alabama's offensive line for sure.
Yeah. Alabama's offense, they were lights out, converting 13 of 19 on I think third down. By comparison to Georgia, who converted just 2 of 8 times, right? So 25% versus 68%. Um, One key thing, Alabama's O line, they had been dealing with injuries, and injuries, and they were finally able to get healthy at the right time. Caden Proctor, he's the big guy that got rewarded for all his hard work he's been putting into the program. He was able to catch a bubble screen. Like, what kind of plays are we, are they dialing up?
That caught me so off guard. I'm like, who is this chubby? Anyway, yeah.
The chubby 6'7", 380,
And just bumbling his way down. I think he got 11 yards on that.
It just seemed like, they were calling all the right plays. But it basically set Alabama up on the 2-yard line. Again, highlighting that line, they only gave up 1 sack the whole night.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that was probably the only time Ty Simpson really got touched.
Yeah.
Speaking of Ty Simpson, what a way to bounce back after that Florida State game. 276 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and he ran for 1 touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
He's got what is needed to achieve everything ahead of Alabama this season, right?
Yeah. I think, all the doubts, all that stuff, hopefully has been put to bed.
Yep.
He's got, maybe he had the first game jitters, in an away stadium, but he's got it figured out now, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and hey, on TV again, they had been the spotlight from the pregame talk to the celebration to the poise throughout the game. It seemed like this spotlight was meant for Ty Simpson on Saturday. Kalen DeBoer, he is now 2-0 against Kirby Smart. Furthermore, he's an absurdly impressive 7-0 combined against Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, and Steve Sarkisian, dating back to his time at Washington. So, he's proving that, even though Alabama has some struggles and they maybe aren't, exemplifying what we've seen with Nick Saban, he's proving that they're a team that can win big games. One thing that everybody's focusing on in terms of decisions of the game, the 4th and 1 decision. What are your thoughts on that, Mash?
Yeah, it happened so fast that, me as an audience member, we didn't really get to process it in real time. By the time the play was done, that's finally when we realized, like, what was that? What happened to the field goal? But at the end of the day, we'll review that play on video here in a second. But at the end of the day, the analytics says what the analytics say, right? You can complain about giving it to Cash Jones versus all the other running backs that we have. Maybe not Nate Frazier because he keeps dropping the ball every game. But the point is, the analytics doesn't account for your offensive line just letting a free rusher through, right? Mm-hmm. That's gonna stop a play every time. So we're not the coach, right? The coaches have their decisions. Kirby Smart decided to be aggressive in this moment versus conservative. It's played out. It's worked well for him before. We can't just, just speaking from a Georgia fan or just someone who's watching the game, you can't criticize the one time he wanted to be aggressive and it didn't work, and not also blame him for the times where he was aggressive and it did work and he won, national championships, with that. Let me pull up the video real quick. All right. So we've got, 4th and 1 on the Alabama 8-yard line early in the 4th quarter. Let me go. Any thoughts before we run the play?
My initial thoughts are, feeling the whole vibe of the game at this point in time. I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's go for 4th down. Alabama hasn't scored the whole second half. You've scored. Your team has some momentum. You've been driving the ball. It's 1 yard. So if it does work, you're like, that was the best decision ever.
A whole different story, right?
Exactly. But if you run the play, again, you see the edge rusher breakthrough. Cash Jones is just trying to stay on his feet, but contact
Even
got him down.
see, even the TV little bug, analytics thing, it says go for it. So it's like, are the coaches relying too much on analytics these days? I don't know, but the
And then
analytics
one thing that
says nothing about someone getting past your offensive lineman.
exactly, and then one thing that I saw on TV that kind of, you know, made sense on why Cash Jones was in there. Georgia wanted to make this a tempo play, right? He was already
Mm-hmm.
out there on the third down play. He's a third down back. So they didn't want to give Alabama a chance to really prep for this play. They wanted to go out there, get the
Right.
play going, get the quick 1 yard. Again, didn't work
Man,
out in their favor,
could Gunner have
but
kept pulled that one?
let's see. Mm, potentially, but
Tough to say. Tough to say.
tough to say. Could have been a design play to go to Cash, but
Yeah.
hey, hindsight, right? It's
Yep.
2020.
Hindsight is always 2020. We have the privilege of knowing how the play ended out and then make criticism, right?
All right, yeah. I mean, so yeah, we kind of diagnosed the play, the miscue, the opportunity there. Nonetheless, we're here now. Alabama is undefeated in SEC play. Georgia's now 1-1. They both have I think it's a 4-1 record
Mm-hmm.
on the year.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, 3-1. Wait, 3-1.
3-1. Yep, both 3-1 because they both have had bye weeks. That's right. Nonetheless, up next, Alabama has to face Vanderbilt. Of course, they're looking for redemption from last year's game, and Missouri. Those games are, I think, both at home, and then after that, they have to host Tennessee. Georgia's upcoming, schedule. They have Kentucky before they go to Auburn, and then they host Ole Miss. So both teams both have to get ready to lock in and get ready for a conference, roller coaster for these next games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So we have made it to our Saturday segment. We're going to see which teams had the Saturday. We're going to pick 4 teams. Typically, these are teams that lost, but these teams definitely had sad, statistics that led to the outcome of whatever happened. So, we got number 1 Florida State here. They had the worst loss of the weekend, so they get the number 1 seed. We got number 2 Georgia, number 3 Arkansas, and number 4 Syracuse. So, Aaron, I'm going to ask you, we'll go number 1 versus number 4. Florida State, their defense allowed back-to-back possessions to start the second half, and each of those were 6+ minutes. So Virginia was able to start back-to-back possessions with 6+ minutes. Syracuse was limited to just a field goal in their 38-3 loss to Duke. So, Aaron, I'm going to ask you, which team had the Saturday there?
Sure. Yeah. I'm gonna have to go with Syracuse there. The loss for Florida State stings, but only scoring a field goal
Mm-hmm.
after beating Clemson and just having
Right.
a great offensive performance. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going with Syracuse there.
Gotcha. All right. And then we have Georgia and Arkansas. Georgia, they gave up 13 third down conversions. I think, what was it, 13 out of 19 or something like that. Arkansas had, this is their third straight loss after a 2-0 start. So between those two stats, what would you say is the Saturday team on Saturday?
Yes, I mean the 3 straight losses, those sound bad, but I know Arkansas has played some really good teams. And I wasn't necessarily expecting a whole lot out of them this season. Georgia, that defense giving up that many third down conversions, that's unheard of, and it's frustrating to watch. So I'm gonna have to go with Georgia there.
I would agree with you on that one. All right, so we've got Georgia and Syracuse battling it out to see who had the Saturday. So for Georgia, Alabama needed 0 second half points to win the game. We covered that a little bit earlier. And Syracuse, they had more time of possession. I didn't pull up the exact time, but they had more time of possession, but they still lost the game by, what is that, like 5 scores? So what would you say, which team had the Saturday there?
I'm gonna have to go with
Unbiased.
unbiased, unbiased. You know, I'm gonna have to go with Syracuse. They had more time of possession, and they still lost by 35, right? So that means they had the ball, they just did nothing with it. They didn't execute.
They could have just stayed
Um,
home. They could have just stayed home if
yeah,
they're going to do all that.
could have just stayed home. Yeah, even though that loss to Alabama, that stings for Georgia fans, and knowing that their defense made the somewhat of adjustments to stop them, and they couldn't overcome. I'm still gonna have to go with Syracuse there for
Nice.
the Saturday.
All right, Syracuse, you're on the board. Good to hear. All right, so that has been a recap of week 5. We've got week 6 coming up, so we'll drop that episode on Thursday. We got some good matchups coming up. We got Miami at Florida State. That's going to be the headliner, I think. Texas is going to be going down to Florida, and Vanderbilt at Alabama. That'll be a good rematch from last year. So we are looking forward to covering those games. We appreciate you guys watching our show. And like, subscribe, follow us on the podcast channels. Appreciate you guys watching and supporting. Talk to you guys next time. Thank you.